Hi, Pathway Teachers. Welcome back to my home. So, hopefully you have watched the two previous videos. The very first video was basic information. The second video was what not to do in a school year performance checkpoint. So, you may be wondering, so what should I do? Glad you asked. Let's go over the core rubric and what myself and other evaluators will be looking for. I want you to know that there are four major bullets under each section of the core rubric that I'll be discussing today. That does not mean that there aren't other indicators that myself or another evaluator may not write on your report. I just pulled out like the top four that we frequently use, but there are others, and I didn't want to overwhelm you. Let's start with culture of learning. When I come into an observation, I'm going to literally count how many students or percentage of students completing tasks. I also will be looking at percentage or number of students following behavioral norms. What are the routines? What are the procedures? Do they know the visual cues? Are you using sign language? You don't have to use these different systems, but you should have some type of behavioral system set up in place that is aligned with the behavioral system or systems set up in place within your school culture. We'll also be looking at students and how they're engaged with the work from start to finish. And then lastly, under culture of learning, how students execute routines. So when you say turn and talk, does that take 5 minutes to get into the turn and talk? When you say get into your groups and start working on group work, that's a transitional routine, and I'll be looking at that. Or when you ask students to get certain materials or supplies, or transition down to the carpet, or go up to the board to produce work. Those are executing routines and procedures. Under essential content, lesson standard, lesson objective, lesson activities, and instructional materials. And these all should be aligned together. So your standard, when you write your lesson objective, should have many of the same words as the standard. The standard may be 3 sentences long, and for this particular lesson, the objective is chunked and much shorter, but the objective should directly align to the standard. Your lesson of activities should be core activities that are going to get our students to meet the lesson objective and therefore meet the standard. And then your instructional materials. We want to use instructional materials that aren't too low, and then the opposite, that aren't too high, and that are appropriate for our students. If our students need a graphic organizer with sequence, meaning 1, 2, 3, and 4, we need to provide those instructional materials and instructional tools. If we're teaching math and they need math manipulatives, we need to make sure we have the appropriate math manipulatives or tools. So that's under essential content. Number 3, under academic ownership, what I'll be looking at are number of students or percentage of students completing challenging work. In the previous video, I talked about intellectual roadblocks. People call it different things, but the point at where you're struggling or having challenges, and that really is where a lot of the deep learning takes place, and our students are grappling with how do they solve this problem. So I want to see the number of students completing that challenging work. In addition to number of students providing oral and or written evidence to support their thinking. How do we use that? You can have an anchor chart that has academic language. You could have a word bank that has the different vocabulary. Those are tools that we use to support students in their oral language development and in writing. So what I want to see is your students and the work that they produce. Sorry, my computer is like going weird. Okay, also, number of students building on peer thinking. So I agree. So you may not use sign language in your class, but your students should be familiar with. And this might come later in the academic year, but I agree with what Beth said. I would like to build upon, right? So they're learning how to use academic language in an academic setting, as one example. And then the last main thing under academic ownership, number of students trying hard to complete work. So I will give you a non-example. A non-example is that 75% of the students are sneaking on their phone and they're clearly not engaged. So that would be not trying hard to complete work. And then on the opposite, if I saw 100% of the groups actively using academic language on task and trying to complete the work, that would demonstrate that they're trying hard to complete the work. And then lastly, but not least, demonstration of learning. Types of questions asked. So are the questions not only relevant to the content, but engaging students in the lesson objective and rolling up into the standard? Types of opportunities students have to express their learning. So they should have a variety of ways to express their learning. What does that look like? It might be a gallery walk. It might be a turn and talk. It might be an exit ticket. It might be a pre-assessment. It might be a journal entry. It might be doing some type of coming up to the front of the classroom and doing board work. It might look like giving a small presentation. It might be doing a video clip or a movie. But how are students expressing their thinking? Number of students, work response that demonstrates progress. So it's not, how do I say this? I'm not looking for every student to get every single work, every single thing correct. I'm looking to see that they are making progress on your learning objective. And then lastly, number of students work on track to meet the learning goal. So are they working on something, but it is not relevant to your learning goal? That would be a non-example. We want them working on tasks that help them meet the learning objective that you have. As always, all of these videos are posted in our classroom. And if you have questions, you can email me. Thanks so much.